Hello and welcome to Game Warp, and I'm your host Elwood Jones, and joining me as always is my partner in crime, Miss Kim Lowe.
Hi, what's up?
Oh, good on this side. How's things on your side of the pond, Kim?
Pretty good, pretty good. The heat just won't go away.
We've finally had a break in the heat now, and now we're back to traditional British weather, which is just grey clouds and rain, and it couldn't be better. Today, we are going to be looking at our featured game for September, which is the 2010 cult puzzle platformer Limbo. But joining us for this episode is a very special guest, as we're joined by the host of both the Debatable Podcast and the Wire retrospective, All the Pieces Matter. It, of course, gives me great pleasure to welcome to the show Greg, a.k.a. Mister Greggles.
See, you learned your lesson. You learned your lesson from doing the other podcast with me. Don't do the last name.
I was looking for him to do it, though.
Yeah. We always go through kind of like a little training, setup right after he introduces me. I'm like, Richard, I need to walk you through this. It's so difficult. I just started a new job, and trust me, no one can pronounce that name. I've heard it like missaid about 40 times.
Yeah, we're all about game tags on this show for sure. Welcome to the show, Greg.
Thanks.
Allow me to obviously welcome you. You're our first guest reviewer here on the show, and we've kind of thrown you an interesting one this week, as Limbo is certainly an interesting game, to say the least. Mm-hmm. I know this is one that Kim enjoyed, and no doubt we'll be hearing more about why she enjoyed it in a bit. But before we obviously get into what the hell Kim put me through for this month's game choice, for people not familiar with your work, why don't you obviously tell us a bit about the Debatable Podcast and obviously your other show, The Wire Retrospective, All the Pieces Matter. Right. What about those shows?
That's a pretty easy way to start to talk about All the Pieces Matter, which is The Wire retrospective, HBO's The Wire, which it's been kind of spotty in the past couple months, and over the past year, really, just because of scheduling difficulties with my co-host Fernando, just trying to get us in the same room to do it. So we've only done one episode this year, but we've been basically walking back through the series through The Wire, and I think we're maybe on the second leg of season 3, and we try to cover 2 episodes per episode of the podcast, so 2 episodes of The Wire per, and we do little season retrospectives at the end and kind of talk about the themes and how it affects maybe the socio-political commentary that's actually happening in the world, and also kind of how it affects other past seasons and even future seasons. We kind of talk. We have spoiler sections where we talk about that. But the first podcast that I did, that I started doing, which you've been on a couple times. You've been on once, and we had a great conversation.
Richard, my mother was thrilled by the title of that one. It's such a career highlight when you said to your mother, it's like, oh, I'm on the Debatable Podcast. This is the high point of my career, and she's like, I almost leave it, and it comes out, and it's like Elwood Jones, the filth elder.
Well, we made such a point on that episode to talk about like kind of gateways to cult cinema, and how people need to have a person at a video store or someone to kind of, we don't have that anymore. People like either find their way on Wikipedia or online or on Twitter or whatever, and we don't have that classic filth elder to, as you coined, to kind of to let us in that gateway of cult cinema like the VHS generation did. So I really liked it's a primer. I really liked the conversation we had. It's a primer for cult cinema. But Debatable is really the Debatable Podcast, which I've been doing since 2012, is really just kind of people's passions and obsessions, and I get them on there to talk about things really selfishly, things that I'm interested in, and I'm also interested in hearing them talk about their passions and obsessions. So, it runs the gamut from movies to video games to writers of all creeds, whether they're screenwriters or novel writers or nonfiction writers. I've had some filmmakers on there like Billy Corben and Uwe Boll. I've had some really well-established TV writers like Mayor Smith, and a shitload of friends and artists and people that I really respect and that I got to know either on Twitter or in the internet blogosphere, including you, Richard, and now Kim. I hope in the future we can do an episode together. Just love talking to people that have like real passions. It's hard to find people who really in the mainstream life. In my regular work life. I love when I can find someone who is really crazy about something because so many people are so kind of like wishy-washy that you'll talk to. They kind of like they don't really do anything but work, and maybe they're a foodie or maybe they like to travel or whatever, but they don't like you really have to dig and find people that really are obsessive, and not just in kind of a I don't mean just in kind of an autistic way or really like really committed to it or whatever. But I feel like life is enriched by that. If you can find someone who has passions and obsessions, that's interesting. It doesn't just have to be movies, and it doesn't just have to be media. But I love talking to people that either have a wide knowledge about something or really do. They're crazy about something, whether it's any sort of pastime, hobby, anything really. So that's where the Debatable Podcast really comes into play.
What would you say is your sort of entry into the world of video games? I mean, where did it sort of start for yourself?
My sister Tanya, who's the younger of the two, got a Nintendo Entertainment System. I want to say in '86, maybe it was '87, '88, somewhere in there in that block of time. And that really like she was a teenager and I was just a kid, and kind of setting off this challenge of playing Mario Brothers with her and kind of trying to beat her score and everything. And I think that if you're born in the '80s, that's really kind of like you're part of that video game generation. We grew up with this stuff, and whereas a lot of people from her generation kind of used Atari or Nintendo as kind of a little dalliance, something from a side escape that eventually they gave up when they became adults and kind of had to find careers and whatever. You don't see them as hardcore about video games as our generation is, that we kind of grown up with interactivity as a part of our mediums. But yeah, I think that Nintendo Entertainment System, it wasn't the Atari for me. It was Nintendo. And then from there, of course, every console that came out, every console cycle I was a part of, and that just that took the trajectory through my teen years and up till today.
I like the fact that you interestingly mentioned about the connectivity with video games, because now it's no longer the case of you sucking on your block. It's now you basically suck on a worldwide scale. So,
Yep.
But in a way, it's obviously by having the internet there and often having this discussion point, it's obviously led to I think games such as our selection for this evening, having more of a platform to be discovered in that. And Kim, I obviously have to pass the floor over to yourself to say, where did you discover Limbo, and why did you choose it for September's game?
Well, I think it was a collective choice. You kept referring to Limbo when we were talking. There was one time I remembered. But Limbo I actually found once by accident when I was looking through my phone, and I saw it as a demo, like a free demo. And then I was like, hey, I'm going to check it out on my phone. This looks like really cute. It's like black and white, and I like these sort of darker tone type of games. Like it has like this sort of like a, I don't know, an unsettling, chilling element type of thing. And I knew nothing about it before. So I went, and then I realized afterwards when I got stuck trying to kill that damn spider that when I went online, I was like, oh my god, this is actually like on PC, and there's like a ton of people that's played it, and
Mhm.
obviously I haven't. And then I realized that was like shortly afterwards. I realized, oh, Inside is coming out, and then I was really into it as well. So
Mhm.
it's yeah. I mean, I may regret that choice as the conversation goes along. You will find because my TV almost suffered some damage.
Oh no! Did you throw a controller at it?
I wanted to so very badly.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned this game comes with a very distinct style. I mean, looking at the screenshots, and I'm thinking that I'm getting like recalls like German Expression 8, some
Uh-huh.
German Expression, some period, and I'm thinking, well, that's exactly what I look for when I look for a fun video game. But the game itself doesn't actually come with any sort of discernible plot at all.
Right.
Obviously, just going off the information that's given to us by Wikipedia, you basically play a nameless boy who awakens in the middle of the forest on the edge of hell. Their words, not mine. And basically, you're on this quest to find your missing younger sister. And it's a journey that takes you through forests, through village filled with angry villagers, into an industrial landscape as the world around you becomes ever more darker and more twisted as you obviously try to find your missing sister. And it's certainly an original game. I would say that it's a 2D puzzle platformer, shot in a black and white monochrome style, giving it a very distinctive look, as well as a tone which is just pitch black from start to
Mhm.
finish, with the few sort of sound effects we get mainly being from your feet rustling as they run through
Mhm.
the grass, or the clunking steps of a giant spider, or whatever horrible thing is chasing your friend in to maim you
Or the
on this
whirring
particular
of
section.
the saw blades or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my god.
I
I mean,
was
Greg.
gonna say the visual style of it that you brought up is interesting to me because I hadn't played this since it came out on the 360, and I picked it up again to revisit it, and I was so surprised that I mean it's fresh in my mind because I had just seen King Kong a few months ago, but to see King Kong, like 30s special effects laden movies, especially that one where they're trying to fool with how deep the jungle is with these different planes, especially when you have stop motion for King Kong himself. You have these like really deep planes of backgrounds, plates, like glass plates that they've done matte paintings on and everything. And that's the feeling, especially the beginning of the game, I get, with that kind of misty background and how, there's that kind of it's playing with the flatness of side scrollers, and you're getting a depth there that's really playing with your eye in the way that these special effects 1930s films did, these adventure films, and that really stood out at me. I really love that part of it.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention King Kong, because the giant spider just brings back all the sorts of nightmares that bug pit sequence still
Yes.
gives me.
Yep.
I mean, this is a game that was really born out of the frustrations of its creator, Art Jensen, who back in 2004 was working as a concept artist for IO Interactive.
Mhm.
And he was basically concerned that the video game world is becoming more increasingly like corporate. And he was sketching what he called a mood image of a secret place that he hit upon this idea for Limbo. And initially, he had planned to program the game himself using Visual Basic, but it kind of fell through when he realized the scale of the game, and it was through teaming up with his co-founder of Playdead, Dino Patti, that they started developing the game that we have now. And it's interesting the fact that they shunned offers that were given to them from mainstream producers because they wanted to keep that original, that full control over the vision.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
didn't want to start adding things such as like multiplayer, or changing the characters so he had a beard, which was offered at one point because
Mhm.
they were uncomfortable about the idea of you playing a child who's constantly put in harm's way.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
I mean, this
violent deaths.
yeah, I mean, this game's a health and safety nightmare when you see some of the things you have to go through. Well, I mean,
Yeah, but I mean, Playdead is obsessed with, I mean, child endangerment. I
Yeah.
mean, Inside is also the same,
Yep.
right?
Yep. I think when Limbo came out, I had a friend who was playing it kind of in parallel to me, and we had many conversations about how shocking the violence was. Because I mean, ostensibly, I mean, I don't buy everything that's said in that Wikipedia article about what discernible story there is. But I've heard people try to kind of talk about how you're not completely sure that either protagonist in either of those Playdead games is really a child. You could probably spin it that it's a small person, but I don't buy that. I think that the child endangerment is really something that you've always flirted with in Spielberg movies of the 80s and kind of the video game generation of the 80s, but this is more than flirting when you have saw blades and things crushing and a spider like sticking its tendril, what do you call it, its foot or whatever, right through you. It's gruesome. It's the gruesome deaths in this game. Yeah.
I think that's where the impact is, right? It
Yeah.
really, like, that's where every single death makes you kind of cringe a little, and
Uh-huh.
or a lot, depending where you are and what
Yeah.
type of death it is. It kind of reminds me a little of the first game we reviewed on Game Warp, Unravel, where I was saying that the first death I had on Unravel was a crab that I assumingly didn't think would kill me, and then somehow it snipped Yarny in half. And then I
Jesus.
was like, why do people like to do that? Like, just
Yeah.
cause this really, really intense moment for you. And it makes you kind of connect a little with the character. It's just,
Right.
I guess this is where I need to talk about puzzles, because that was the most frustrating part of this. I don't know if you guys agree.
That's interesting. I've always kind of approached like with Braid and with Portal, and I think that elements of the cleverness of Portal kind of bleed into Limbo and certainly Inside. But I think with all of these games, I've always kind of made up my mind that I'm going to have a certain level of frustration. To me, I mean, like it's the same thing that you do when you come up against Dark Souls. A game that's tremendously takes a lot of pride in how tremendously hard it is and the reward you get from overcoming it. Yes, I mean in Limbo, I remember this time and I remember the original time playing it, how you can get stuck and you can get frustrated and you're gonna die a lot, but when you do overcome it, I feel like there's a real reward there, especially if you don't end up going to look online for how to beat it. But I remember how stuck I was, especially on like parts like the ladder on the moving platform and how to get through the that skylight area. It killed me for a long time.
when it comes to the puzzles, this is where I found some of the biggest frustrations with this game. There's an early puzzle early on where you first encounter the giant spider and it comes creaking out of the tree in one of those horrible moments that you will encounter throughout this game. And you have to avoid its legs that are basically pounding on the ground, and there is no clear indication how to pass it. It's
Hmm.
only when you realize that you have to go back to where
Hmm.
you see a hanging bear trap that the spider knocking on the ground will drop down. But because this bear trap is off screen, you don't see it fall down. As far as
Right.
you're aware, the spider failing to hit you is causing nothing to happen. And I
I,
felt that, oh my god, this is not how a puzzle should be done. A puzzle should present itself
right.
with all the pieces there for you to put together. It shouldn't be that you're given this puzzle to solve and we're going to take out a key part.
Well, there's things that are camouflaged, I think. Especially, I remember going back to to playing it the first time, there's things that are camouflaged into the game and what it's teaching you early on. I remember, not looking at my player's feet as I was running, and it teaches you a lesson very quickly because the first time you come up against a bear trap, you might not see it at your feet. You just think it's, foliage or whatever on the ground, and very quickly when it snips your head off, you're very aware of the bear trap. So, to me, I start becoming hyper aware of things in the environment around me. And, on this playthrough, granted I've played it before, I was more mindful of, okay, well, I can see that bear trap up in the tree when they got to that, or, I could see, I'm going to need to push that log from up there to get across this pond or whatever. It teaches you those lessons by, giving you gruesome deaths. That's what I learned early on in the game.
I have to question though, what sort of lesson is it teaching you where the solution is to basically bugger around with the Switch like a 4-year-old on the ups and downs of a sugar binge, who's recently discovered that the light switch turns the lights on and off? Because one of these puzzles, you basically have to flick the switch on and off to get the box to go in some sort of a straight line, but because in your adult logic, you flick a switch and it does whatever you need to. You set up the pieces for the transaction to complete. It's not the fact that you have to keep flicking it on and off to get it to go to where you need to go. I couldn't see the logic in that, and I have other people going, "Oh, that's a really clever puzzle." And I'm thinking, no, you would only figure that out by buggering around.
Yeah, but
you appreciate you come to it with that sort of logical conclusion.
But I do say that's clever, and that is very original in a way where it challenges you to not only, like Greg says, kind of pay attention to the surroundings around you more and like the little details, but also at the same time it challenges your mind to be more flexible in the things that you're going to do and the way you're going to solve a problem. Yes, It's mind-boggling, and that puzzle really, really pissed me off. But that wasn't the worst one, I think, for me. But I hate the timing more than anything. Like, the timing and all the puzzles are just so precise.
Was it timing? Is there a particular puzzle like Elwood pointed out with the spider? Was there a particular puzzle that frustrated you to no end?
Yes. The one that I wanted to throw the controller at the screen was the one where we were on these electric platforms. And then you were riding on that mine cart sort of thing.
Right.
And you were like riding down, and then you had to have that perfect momentum and timing to jump onto the platform, run for your life. Yeah. And then like it was, oh my God, that one I think we did like 60 times.
Yeah. It's something that is about like side scrollers in general and puzzle games. Like, I feel like there's always one that's just the bane of your existence. I know I've run into it in pretty much every one of these games that I really love, including Portal and Portal 2. There's always something that I try so hard to think outside the box, and when you finally get to the way to overcome it, I'm like, oh, it's that one little thing. It might be even so poorly conceived or whatever, like a little glitch in the system that you have to exploit in order to make it work, and that shit would just drive me up the wall. But yeah, I kind of like go back to these games being, the Godfathers being, Super Mario Brothers and all of these games we kind of grew up with. I remember getting into places that were just impossible to get through, but I don't remember the puzzles being a problem. It was more like, you could understand it as a player. If you couldn't get past an area, you knew that the onus was on you. You had to overcome it, like whether it was a big long jump or getting over King Koopa or whatever. But when it got to doing puzzle games, I mean, sometimes just thinking outside the box, especially in Limbo and the other game that Playdead did, they just seem like extrapolated. They seem so abstract that it can be so frustrating.
But at the same time, sometimes the solution is as simple as figuring out, like, I remembered, like, I was playing it, I didn't have that same problem, but When my husband was playing it, playing Inside, we'll go to Inside later, but there was just like one little issue is that you just have to choose dropping down the right spot. And he was like, he didn't
Yes.
think about that. And that's it,
Yep.
you know, like he didn't think about it. And it was, when he figured it out, he was like, oh my God, I'm an
That's what I
idiot.
mean. Like, yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just always the simplest thing. When you try to overthink it, that's when you're like, oh, I got to think outside the box from this, and then it's so simple that you're like, fuck, we're maybe three-fourths of the way through the game. Why are you throwing something that simple at me? And then you get resentful.
Something that really bugged me as well, other than some of these puzzles, is the fact that we have some sort of storyline throughout the game. We have these set pieces, and we
Hmm.
get to about the halfway point, and then it's almost as though Playdead thought sort of ran out of ideas. That they had ideas of the setting, but they
Right.
didn't know how to do the next set piece because we sort of have all these wonderful set pieces, such as we have when we're in the forest, we have the spider sequence.
Hmm.
When we're in the village, we have the angry villagers and the bridge we go across, which causes the little guy to hang himself,
Hmm.
which kind of traumatized me and made me want to go back and see is there something I missed and that could I save that person. It also brought to mind that while you're playing it, because there's no sort of text boxes to give any sort of background, there's no like snippets of information that like we saw
Hmm.
with Unravel, which hinted at its storyline in the background for the memories. With this game, you're basically you waking up in the forest the same as the character. You're experiencing what your character's experiencing as he experiences it. So when you hit the village, I had this thought that, oh, are we like this malevolent presence, this monster, and they're defending themselves against ourselves because we're this mythical monster. And then you get through the village, and it's like, no, that wasn't it at all. You're just
Right.
carrying on your course. You're going on the endless track, and we get into obviously the factory, and then we start messing around with gravity, which
Right.
again it made no sense. And by the time we're finally flung through the mirror into the supposed reality and the game just ends, it's kind of left there with the same sort of feeling that you get at the end of a good Game of Thrones episode of what the hell just
Right.
happened.
Right.
Was that supposed to make sense? Is something going to come up after the credits
Hmm.
or something? But no, there's nothing. You get some credits. No, thank you for playing. No, no, nothing.
Yeah, there's something about sparseness. I really like it, especially in indie games and more recent games where the people who have been influenced over a couple generations now by classic video games are using it kind of as a medium to do more sparse, telling a story with environment or with a character, like Ico and Shadow of the Colossus are really good games that don't over explain their story. You can get a lot of the narrative, just from playing it and just from the environments that you're in. And with this game, yes, it's even more sparse. And I like the influences, especially early on. You talk about there's the area that's very much like I was talking about, like King Kong. Kind of a adventure monster film, and then it gets into that kind of Lord of the Flies area where I kind of read it as not just angry villagers, but like peers, same age and size as you, but they're trying to survive. So they would rather kill you rather than have to feed another person. Have another mouth to feed or some shit like that. However, you want to extrapolate that area, but when it gets to the factory areas, that's when the side scrolling and the puzzle solving gets more like Portal, like I was saying. Like you're kind of you have to think outside the box, especially with gravity and playing with that and trying to get past whatever saw blade or whatever. Also, these like there's another element that'll come up later, say in Inside, was this kind of like mind control thing, this worm that like digs into your head and makes you go only one way until you hit like a beam of light and burn it out of your skull to turn you around. And there's another element there that in the gameplay and the actual controlling of the character I thought was very clever. But yeah, it's not completely even, you know. It's not completely well conceived, and not all the parts I think fit together perfectly, even if I like the influences. But yeah, no, I see where you're coming from with that.
There was a point that, while I was playing Limbo, I was also playing a no narrative game. You might know it, called Journey.
Uh-huh.
And I had just finished Limbo when I played Journey, and it's very obvious that Limbo is extremely abstract in their story. Like, you kind of have to guess most of it, as with
Right.
Playdead's games, the two games that they've had so far.
Hmm.
And like with Journey, my feeling really was very strong about that, because I felt like the story, although it was no narrative and the visuals were also very beautiful, it formed an actual story much better than like Limbo
Hmm.
did. Obviously, it's kind of different in a sense, where I guess Journey is also really hard in a sense, but I guess it's kind of like a hope sort of game, whereas like
Hmm.
Limbo is kind of like a dark sort of game.
It's so bleak. It's so fucking
Yeah.
bleak.
I don't like the fact that it seems like it's going nowhere. Like, I guess in that sense, I agree with Elwood, because I feel that while the story is trying to build something, it kind of loses its momentum, and it becomes more of a puzzle experience
Yeah.
and an atmosphere experience, more than it is about telling a story, that is not the case with Inside.
Yes. Right. I
Yeah.
agree with you. I think that's probably the overarching thing. And I love that you bring up Journey, because Journey definitely it gets a lot of mileage out of a much more, even if it's abstract, a much more positive story. I think that I had such a visceral reaction to that game because of, the even if it's got kind of, I guess you could extrapolate it as a melancholy story. As it goes on, it has a very hopeful play experience, where this is just built around overcoming puzzles, or pushing the
Difficulties.
timing of, yeah, difficulties, and with a shitload of deaths. You're you're dealing with.
Yeah, this is in lies my main problem with this game is so crushingly bleak. There's no
Yeah.
light in this game at all. Even the happy dragonfly, it's can only exist for you to pull its leg off. Um, this is the
Y-
world of just darkness and death. There is no light in Limbo. It is, as the title suggests, it's this.
Right.
You're just very much on one level playing this game. If you do experience another level, it's probably just pure frustration or blind rage. Needless to say, this game has certainly come up with a number of colourful phrases for myself, and it's probably all the better I didn't stream it while I was trying to play it. I don't know. I said there's too many times I just wanted some light in this game. I wanted something to
Hmm.
not feel that it was just this oppressive beat down on my general self. It's sort of like I've got X amount of hours to play video games a week, and I'm obviously dedicating my time to getting this game done with Joe, and it's sort of like I think by the time we got into the factory, I just kind of wanted to be over. And I think as the puzzles are getting harder but less fun, such as the gravity ones, where you have this fraction of a second to hit these
Right.
buttons and flip the gravity, where it just felt like they were being overly complex, or the solution was being too well hidden.
Hmm.
It was taken away from my enjoyment, and certainly the lack of set pieces. The set pieces in the early part of the game
Right.
helped keep the interest. I mean, they certainly keep the tension up. There's certainly nothing quite as tense as being chased by a giant ambling spider. I have to say that much. And I think now the giant
Isn't
spiders in this game probably rank right up there with when, if you're driving in your car and a spider comes down from your in front of you or something.
Do you
isn't it
realize you
abs-
notice more spiders than before now? Like,
Oh
I
yeah.
noticed, like, there's a gigantic spider right behind me on that window behind me where we're recording, and it is like freaking me out so much. But I have to build. I'm so happy we went back to talking about like puzzles, because there is two comments for Elwood, just because from past recordings that we did. I don't know if Greg's watched them before, but One comment relating to Oxenfree is that at least you didn't have nightmares. And second one, second one is you made a comment in Song of the Deep about the puzzles being overly repetitive. So you should think this is like a fresh bit of fresh air where it's totally different.
That's true. They did change it up a bit.
Yeah, I now instead of being repetitive puzzles, I just found more inventive ways to take a buzzsaw to the face. That's what I learned. I learned that Playdead have come up with more ways to maim small children than any other game before them. But,
When you were talking about the spider, by the way, I remember you tweeting about, or maybe you had posted on Facebook about how great, I was looking forward to this game, and then I remember that there were spiders in this thing, and I remember you seeing in that early part, after you've kind of destroyed one of the spiders, or maybe it's the same spider, I'm not sure, where it's just the body and one leg, and you
Oh
have
my
to rip
god.
that leg off and use its body to get over like this spiked pit. And I was
That
like, this
was
is disgusting.
that is so messed up. That was seriously when you were talking about the dragonfly pulling like flying on the dragonfly and his leg falling off, and that was the thought I came to. I was like,
Yeah.
the poor spider is already like dis- destroyed.
Yeah.
Why? Oh my god! And then you see like the juices and stuff.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
and people there, I see recommending this as a game for their kids. It's like, oh, it's a fun little platformer. I'm thinking, really?
I don't want to know how your kids are going to turn out. Let's put it that way. If you recommend this to your kids, that's all I gotta say. Sounds a little judgmental, but if you do play this with kids, I want to. I don't. You need
You're
some
con-
psych help after that.
You're Canadian. You're supposed to be so nice about this, Kim.
I'm already pretty nice.
Granted.
Okay. I mean, who is the audience for this game? That's what I want to know. I mean, obviously, it's attract the interest of the independent game crowd. There's people who like puzzle platformers. It's obviously got those. But who, when they were obviously coming up with this game, did they have an audience in mind, or was this just basically a one man making a game essentially for himself, which is something we've seen before with things such as like Fez,
Yeah.
which is a very personal game, and I remember its creator getting rather upset that people weren't seeing it the same way he was,
Right.
which you can obviously see in the documentary indie game.
I was going to say that's kind of the grouping that I think of, the Super Meat Boy and these kind of nostalgic classic game kind of revisionists. Um, 18 to 34-year-olds that like to see children die. I think that's or Xbox players. I'll loop you. I'll lump all of you into the same thing. No, I think that's probably the Fez and Super Meat Boy and kind of the indie game console generation that kind of like built up around this time when it was becoming more and more popular to have like Xbox Live Arcade or PlayStation Store games. That's really, I think, the group for it.
It's certainly
It's
been
just
an interesting.
anybody.
Sorry, Kevin, you were saying.
Sorry, I'm just saying it could be just anybody that's into a darker tone, like more messed up
Hmm.
sort of games. I mean, that's what it seems like it's about. Like, like, I mean, you can say this is not a child, but when you look at him, he looks like one. So,
Yep.
like, just the features of just like his little feet, how he walks, and just like how his little like cute little haircut is, and all that. Like, it's just a silhouette, but you get a good idea of that this is a kid that feels
Right.
really innocent, right? So, I think it's just people who are fascinated by the topic of like darker topics.
Right. The thing that we didn't talk about is that you're a silhouetted child. You're all blacked out, and you have these bright eyes, and you spend most of the game watching the light go out in this child's eyes. And it's really fucked up now that I think about it.
So, I actually want to bring up a question is that did you guys actually go and play the secret level?
No, by the time I reached the end, it was like, yeah, that's it, game done. There was
So,
nothing ever created after this point. It just ended.
What's the secret level? I forget.
The secret level, I went to watch a gameplay. I didn't go back because you have to collect all of the eggs, which will, at one area you go to, like it's really hidden. You go under and it's this dark tunnel, which I actually found by accident.
Hmm.
And when all the candles are lit, you proceed down that hallway, like that little path, and then you actually, a gate closes, and then you go in. And then you're playing literally a level in pitch blackness.
Oh.
So you literally just have your eyes that you follow, and then you listen to all the sounds that are coming at you. And then time yourself perfectly, and that's what it is.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, that
And
sounds like a fun game.
yeah, that was why I didn't do it. And on top of that, did you know there was like an achievement for like 5 deaths or less? I don't know if that's even possible to play Limbo in
Jesus.
5 deaths or less.
I could
Your
see,
timing has to be insane.
seeing how there's people who have posted walkthroughs of games such as like Inside or Super Meat Boy without any deaths. I would say it is possible. If there's people with like super dexterity, or they just constantly play the game over and over again, so they get that rhythm down and they know exactly where to go and what to do. Because there's a lot of deaths that you will occur through trial and error,
Right.
rather than timing. So I feel that it is possible, and in many ways, when you watch those long play videos, it plays. Certainly in the case of their follow-up Inside, like you're watching like a mini movie.
Hmm.
With this one, I would say less so, purely because it loses those scripted moments. And if it had kept the scripted moments throughout, then you would have still had that same sort of film feeling, even though there is no sort of clear script the game seems to be following. As I said, even now I'm not sure what I made of it. I know it happened, but it's sort of like so hard to say whether it was like an enjoyable experience or one that I would return to, because there's certainly something there, and I enjoyed elements of this game. But at the same time, I think toward the end, because I was playing it in pretty much one go rather than perhaps breaking up into blocks and putting like something colourful in between, a little Viva Pinata or something, just to relieve that grayness. That it probably been a bit lighter for myself, but yeah, I mean, what did you guys think about? I mean, should we do a rating now, or is there anything?
Yeah, I think it's time for a rating, and we can kind of talk about why. Okay, I have my rating. I definitely give it a 3.5. I'm a little hesitant, okay? I'm kind of in between right now. Um, the reason being that it's very unique. It's definitely a unique gaming experience. Although it was very, very frustrating. I love the atmosphere. I love the dark tones. I love like what they're trying to do, and then everything kind of pieces together in the final scene, and it's really nice in that sense. Like you can really understand that this is like really a breakthrough piece in this sort of style. And I think that for that it deserves it. But I mean, most of the points lost is really for the amount of frustration and my almost damaged TV that I lost points for.
I think that at the time when it came out, I would probably say I gave it a solid 5 because I think that it really, I was on the wavelength of not only the game but the gameplay and feeling like it was very clever, and I didn't need a story. I really enjoy things that don't spoon feed you. And I think that that's something you get with a lot of AAA games. That not only are they super linear with its gameplay or the way it's leading you through the game, but the story is often repetitious and it's spoon feeding you in kind of a network TV way. And I like indie games that were, especially at that time, getting away from that. And I think that at the time I would have given it a 5. Replaying it, I see a little bit more of the unevenness and the flaws that we kind of talked about. So, that might knock it down to a solid 4 for me now. Even with, the flaws that we talked about, and feeling that maybe, especially towards the last third of the game, feeling that it's disjointed and that it's a little less impressive not in puzzles, but less impressive in kind of the setting and what the game is, what the game really is with the main character and what you're able to do. Not as impressive as the first two thirds for me. Once you get to those factory levels, and it's straight down to puzzles that are often really about timing and kind of take away some of the cleverness for me. So yeah, I think with those flaws, I still think it's a great game. I think it's a fantastic game. I love the art design. I love the concept, and it's definitely one of the best that I played in that generation, in the Xbox 360 generation. So yeah, I would definitely play it. But yeah, it's not perfect.
As for myself, I'm going to be siding with Kim and giving it a solid 3.5. I actually got this game free because of the promotion Playdead were doing at E3, so thank you to them for that. Perhaps because I didn't pay for it, I rated it a little less brutally than I could, as this is a very diverse game. It's not going to appeal to everyone, but at the same point, it comes with an indie game price bracket, so even if you are paying for the game, it's not going to be a huge sort of gamble. It's not like you're paying the same price of a AAA game.
By the way, with iOS Kim mentioned on her phone, I didn't know if you were talking about Android. The Limbo is out for these touchscreen smartphones that you have, and it's $1. Now,
yeah, right now they're on a promotion, so they're at like
great.
$1 or $2 or something like that.
It's great. I was moving last week, last part of couple weeks ago, and I didn't have my 360 set up to start replaying it. So I was looking on there, and I just happened to fall upon it that it was on the App Store, and I downloaded it, and that kind of got me reinterested in it. The thing that kind of I couldn't keep doing was the touchscreen controls. I just don't like touchscreen controls compared to using a controller, but it is a cheap option if you don't have a console, or that if you don't want to invest in the probably higher price for the console version. Give it a shot. If you can get into the touchscreen controls, it's pretty responsive. I think it's a pretty good version of it.
Yeah, PlayStation sells it for $10, so it's not really like a huge huge chunk of change, right? So it's all right. It's all right.
This is when you mention it on iPhone. It's sort of like the reason I would download it for my iPhone and stuff would be like, I really don't like my phone anymore, so I'm going to play Limbo on it because I don't trust myself to play a game with this frustration on something that is potentially going to be thrown across the room.
Can you imagine the frustration of the timing on some of these puzzles towards the end? On touchscreen, that would make you throw your phone right on the ground.
Okay, thank you, Greg, for obviously coming on and talking to us about Limbo today. If people obviously do want to find your bits and pieces on the internet, where's the best place to find you?
Oh, I'm on Twitter. I'm Mister Greggles, MisterGreggles. The Debatable Podcast and All the Pieces Matter are on iTunes, and they're also on Tumblr. That's where I post the new episodes for streaming and download. And so Debatable is on debatablepodcast.tumblr.com, and All the Pieces Matter is at wirepod.tumblr.com.
Thanks so much for listening. Huge thank you to Greg for being here, but he's gonna be back for Inside.
Yep.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. We'd love to hear your feedback and recommendations. Head over to our home base at momentin.com to read more gaming reviews and news bits, to get gaming news and releases every single day. Follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook at Game Warp Podcast. To catch our episode on the go, you can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Podomatic. So thank you so much for listening. We'll see you in the next episode, which will be Inside. Bye!